live.
All right. All right, welcome to the June 29th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting for the City of Travelers Rest. My name is Tony Rackley. I'm acting as chairman this evening. Rebecca's not with us, and I would like to call this meeting to order. And so I'll now call the roll. I'm going to start on the far end down there, if you don't mind. So the members of the commission, starting on my far left, please state your name.
Brian Havey, present.
Evan Cantrell.
And I'm Tony Rackley. We will begin with the review and approval of minutes from our last scheduled meeting on May 25th, 2023. Let me just grab that real quick. Oh, yes. And do I hear a motion to approve these minutes as presented? We all have a copy of those, I think.
Yes, sir.
Motion.
Second.
All right. And I have a motion and to approve, and I got a second to approve. Here, do we have any discussions about those minutes from the last meeting? Then if we don't have any, I would like to call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please indicate by saying nay, since we have no one else. The motion is carried by a vote of ayes and ayes, with commissions and all the commissioners here present casting no dissenting votes. All right. Item number 2A on our list this evening is the new business, and it's the 5-year comprehensive plan review. We have no new business that's outside of or that needs voting on this evening, so it's all pretty much just a discussion between ourselves about the master plan that we're still working on for 2023. So we have the population and housing elements is the first discussion on that. Is that what we have? Is that the only thing other than the part B of this? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mike.
Yep. So as Mr. Rackley mentioned, today will be just mostly informational purposes. As we've talked about before, the comprehensive plan was initially written or was last written in 2018 for the city of TR as required by the state, and it's just as good as is good planning practice. It should be reviewed every 5 years and completely overhauled every 10 years. So we are at that 5-year review period now. So within that review, we're going to be there are 10 chapters to the comp plan. So within that review, we're going to be breaking down over these next 3 or 4 months, a few chapters at a time that I'll be bringing forth before y'all. So the first couple chapters, because the 2020 census was just released in May. I was not able to get to this to you any sooner, but I did want to wait until the census numbers were out. So, and mind you, that is the 2020 census that was just released in May of 2023. So they were a bit underfunded this last time around. And I can say that the census data is still not complete. There's still not a full slate of information that's available for all jurisdictions or all areas in the country. So I'm working with the information I have, and some of this information, if it's not available via the census, it is available via the American Community Survey, which is sort of like a mini census. As you know, the census is decennial; it's every 10 years, as required by the Constitution. This is the ACS is done on a yearly basis. It's a lot smaller, the data is not quite as accurate, but it is more frequent, so it does give you a little bit more recent snapshot of information, even though the data is not quite as rock solid as the census data would be. So with that in mind, the numbers that I'm going to be presenting here are a mix of both, and you'll see on these slides, if it's not census data, I do make a note underneath each. Can y'all can see that?
Oh, yeah, I was just looking to make sure everybody's.
I do make notes underneath based on whether or not the data was obtained from the census or otherwise. So with that, we'll just kind of move into some of the things that I found. Some of these are just recreations of the 2018 comp plan information that we've already have on hand. Some of these are new information that I thought would be relevant and interesting for y'all to see. So real quick, the total population from the city As you can see, it's basically a steady upward climb. As of the 2020 census, the census population is 7,788 for the city for the city. The ACS data is a little bit different. That's showing, I think, in the 7,800 to 7,900 range, depending on the year, 2021 or 2022. So like I said earlier, the 2020 census data is the most rock solid. So even though it's a little bit older longer in the tooth, it is the most accurate number that we have. And you had a question?
I did have a question. Is Furman, are they incorporated in our city limits?
They are. So if you'll notice on the graph there, right around 2013, you'll see that Furman,
see
the
when I came
Paladin diamond. I'm not sure what the exact term is, but the Furman logo. That's about when they were annexed into the city. I believe it was April of 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So at that time, you see the population jumps quite a bit from the 2010 census to the 2020 census. So the growth within that 10-year period is about 70% within the city, which is 7% per year. But I went ahead and took those Furman numbers out just to give you an idea of what our growth rate looks like in the city if we did not annex Furman. And this isn't, 100% accurate, but this is as close as we can get to accurate because we're dealing with numbers that might have been taken at a little bit different time than the census took them. So keep that in mind. But it'd be roughly 28% growth in the city from 2010 to 2020, which is about 2.8% per year if Furman's not included. If they are included, it's a 70% jump, so it's about 7% per year. So we were able to figure out exactly the number of people living on campus at the time that was closest to when the census was taken. So that's the fall of 2020. It was 1,944 students were living on campus in the fall 2020 semester. And that's a little bit lower, obviously, than what is there currently, just because of COVID at the time. There was less students on campus. So that normal number is closer to that 2,388 that was on campus as of fall of 2021. So all that said, looking back all the way to 1960, the city of Travelers Rest has grown 295% in the 60-year period between 1960 and 2020. So that's about 4.9% per year. So that's a pretty good jump, pretty good growth rate. And you'll see here, I'll show you here as we move forward. I show some sister cities to TR, both in the upstate and throughout the state, and we are comparable, if not higher growth rate than almost everyone else. So moving forward, so like I mentioned, other cities, sister cities in the county. So again, this shows Travelers Rest versus the growth rates in Fountain Inn, Greer, Malden, and Simpsonville, which are the other incorporated cities in the city or in the county of Greenville, not including the city of Greenville. We'll show that on a separate slide. But as you can see, the growth rate for Travelers Rest, not only from 2000 to 2020, but from 2010 to 2020, is at or greater than every other municipality in the county. Travelers Rest grew about 90% in total in the 20-year period between 2000 and 2020. The only city that grew faster than that rate is Greer, which grew 110%, over double in that same period. And you'll notice we are the smallest municipality in the county as well. Yes, ma'am.
Time frame does that for Greer? Do you know? Is that inclusive of the annexation that they?
Yes, so the numbers you see here are the total numbers of all annexations and everything that's included within each city. This includes Furman as well.
Greer has just grown and annexed measurably or measurably.
Yes, I think their slogan is "From the mountains to the seas" for a reason. Yeah. So they do annex it a little. They have a little bit different policy than we do, than the city of TR does when it comes to annexation. Definitely. Okay, moving forward. This, like I mentioned earlier, this is the city of Greenville. It shows TR, city of Greenville and Greenville County using the same time frames and growth rates. So as you can see for Greenville County, which to me is a little bit more interesting than it would be Greenville City, just because of what we're dealing with. We are almost triple the growth rates from not only the 20-year period between 2000 and 2020, but also the last 10 years from 2010 to 2020. We are growing at the city of TR is growing at a much faster clip than the county as a whole. And the county as a whole is still growing at a pretty fast clip. It's not as if they're not growing. So we're experiencing either the same or greater growth pressures than everywhere else around us.
Question, how are these numbers determined? Knocking, is it move-in rates, vacancy rates, is it?
So the U.S. Census, they do a mixture of things. They do mailings, they do email, and they also do door knocking as well. So that's why they only do it once a decade, because it's so thorough that they need to. Their aim is to get everybody's count.
And so these are all U.S. Census numbers based on what they've provided, at least at this point?
Yes, these are, the figures you have in front of you are all U.S. Census, and actually the note is on the bottom, the source is on the bottom there. I just didn't have it zoomed out far enough. Yep. Okay, so as you can see, Greenville County growing at about 1.6% per year. If you remember from the slide earlier, TR without Furman is growing about 2.8% per year. So even without considering the Furman annexation, the city of TR is growing at almost twice the clip of the county as a whole. Moving on, just to show you another, just some more comparison. These are cities throughout the state that have comparable populations to the city of TR. As it currently stands. And again, we're growing at almost at orders of magnitude larger than some of the other cities you see here, Abbeville, Clinton, Georgetown, and York. York is experiencing the only thing that's really close to our growth, just being their proximity to the Charlotte region. As you can see, though, obviously we are growing at a much faster clip than even some of the other comparable cities in the upstate. Or I'm sorry, in the state. Let's see. So that's sort of the census population figures. Were there any additional questions as it relates to that before we move on, as it relates to the growth rates of TR versus some of the other?
Before we get more accurate data, it'll be 2030.
Correct. This is the most accurate data we will have until the 2030 census data is released.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking over what we've done in the last year and a half of, bringing things into here when that fills out.
And we're going to be talking about that
Right.
a little bit more. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There is a slide later on that gets into that a little bit. So
because
yeah,
we'll have a insight to that if we put the numbers in there.
Yeah, we can. So what I've done, and it's not foolproof or perfect by any means, but I'm able. If you use the 2020 numbers as a baseline, like we know that 7788 is accurate as of 2020.
Right.
And then we add the number of rooftops that we've added since then, times the
And proposed
2.59,
rooftops.
Yeah, 2.51 people per household.
Right.
Gets you proposed X.
X number. Yep.
Yep. And that's not wholly accurate, because you also
Right.
have vacancy rates.
Sure.
So that, you take that into account as well. So there's ways to kind of extrapolate what we think the population will be. And then the ACS does get you kind of close to that, the American Community Survey. So there are ways to get to that number that's a little more recent than 2020.
Right.
And then one more slide on population. These are just some characteristics of the population of Travelers Rest. You see the top right, the racial diversity. White alone is about 6,129 out of the 7,700. So that's roughly 75% are white alone. Black alone is about almost 900. Other alone could be Hispanic, could be Asian, could be Pacific Islander. It kind of lumps together quite a few people into the other alone. And then two or more races is about 400 or so, so about 5% of the population. The characteristics that you see on the bottom right, the sex characteristics, It's about 56.6% female, 43% male. I think some of that has to do with the Furman population. I think that plays a large part in why it's not closer to 50-50. So those are those numbers. And again, this is as of the 2020 census. And then the age distribution on the bottom left, median age for the city is 22.9 years. That's relatively young. Again, that's
crazy.
because of I believe because of Furman.
I gotcha.
And then we're also seeing a lot of younger families are moving here as well. So I think it's a combination of both. But I really do think Furman is the major driver for that median age being brought down. And then the distribution of the ages, as you see, so 0 to 19 and 20 to 39 make up, roughly, what's that, 70% of the population. So again, that's more than likely due to Furman being in that 18 to 22 range. That's, if you have 2,000 or so people, with 2,500 or so people that living here, that's a third of the population of the city. So that's going to make up a large part of those numbers for the age distribution. All right, any other questions on population as we move on? Okay. All right, moving into housing. So total housing units within the city, as you can see, we've jumped up 48%, about 2.4% between 2000 and 2020, and then a big jump, or almost equally as big a jump, or a little bit bigger actually, excuse me, between 2010 and 2020. So the growth rate is about 3.4% when it comes to housing units in Travelers Rest. And on the bottom, you'll see that versus the Greenville County total housing unit growth. So their housing unit growth is growing at roughly the same clip as what their population is growing as, and we're a little bit under the population. But again, I think that's due to Furman. They already have dorms on campus that students live in, or they have housing facilities already on campus that they live in. So that's probably explains a little bit of the difference there. But the county continues to add a lot of housing units. The city continues to add quite a few housing units, and I'll show you here on a slide a little bit further exactly where those units are located. But this is sort of the total number for the city and county. And I mentioned earlier, just going back real quick, I did mention earlier the 2.5% or 2.51 or so, 2.59, I think it is, persons per housing unit. If you notice, the number of housing units is 2,500 and the population is 7,700. So that's about 3 roughly. So that kind of is in line with what we anticipate the number of persons per household would be. New housing permits. This data, I got some of this is from our own. Let me shrink this up a little bit so you can see it all. Greenville County provided us with their permit, their new housing permit numbers. They haven't given us the 20, or I wasn't able to get the 2023 data as of today. So what you have is just through 2022. But you notice that they had a precipitous drop in 2022 for new housing permits, and I assume that's related to, in some ways, to COVID and the price of housing. And as that starts to stabilize, I think you're going to see that number start to rise a little bit.
Multi-family?
Yes, this is all any housing. Yep, new housing permits. Yep, yes, ma'am. So and in the city, in TR, it didn't see as big of a drop because obviously we don't have as big of a number to drop from. We did see a little bit of a drop between 2021 and 2022, but if you notice in 23, we're almost at our historical average, and it's not even the end of June yet. So I think my belief is that by the time that I'll update these numbers again before it goes to city council for final approval, I'm almost assured that those numbers will be well past the historical average and probably well past our highest number in 2021.
So for example, Limestone, the number of units there, would that be put like that, or would it be a different?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood your first question. So this would just be for the single-family attached and attached single-family. So like townhouses would be included, and everything but apartments essentially that's residential.
No multi.
No multifamily, correct. Yep, so this is only for new housing starts for the single-family and attached single-family. Yep.
So that's probably been the only multi in there, in that I can think of in the city limits,
The Pinestone,
Rentals.
with the apartments
apartments.
that I could think of.
Yeah,
The-
and there's a slide here that'll get into that
Right.
question exactly, but yeah, I think you're right. So that is new housing for the city versus the county. So I do, like I mentioned, I anticipate 2023 to be a record year for our new housing permits, once all the Pinestone comes in and some of the other ones start coming through the door. Wethington is continuing to build as well. Okay, occupancy rates. This is from the city, I'm sorry. Yeah, so of I mentioned earlier, we had about 2,500, give or take 2,570 housing units. We have 88% occupancy rate in those units. About 12% are vacant as of the time of the census, when that was released when that was taken in 2020. And that's on the top left. And then looking to your right, you'll notice the occupancy rate is right around our historical average since 2000. It was at 90% in 2000, dropped a little bit to 85% in 2010. But then since the 2016 and 2020 numbers, it's been relatively stable, about 88%. So about 12% vacancy is what we can anticipate in a normal year. And the 2016 number that I have there, that number was included from the comp plan, from our 2018 comp plan. So that was the data they used. So I wanted to put that in there just to be able to bounce that off of our 2020 numbers. And then the bottom table, this was taken from the American Community Survey. This is when homes were built in the city, the year that, or the decade that homes were built in within the city. So if you notice, or that's existing housing stock when those homes were built. So if you notice, most of the decades are in that 4 to 5. The older ones are in that 3 to 5 to 6% range. The 90s, it looks like there was quite a housing boom in the 90s here in the city, at least for existing housing stock. Those continue to that's about a third of the houses built in the city were built in the 90s. And then 2000 to 2009, same thing. And 2010 to 2020, it's a little bit surprising that only 7%. I'm not really sure why that number is so low. I'm guessing because a lot of the developments that are either in process or were planned on in the 2010s are being built now.
Right. I was thinking too that with that would probably jump astronomically from 20 to 23.
Yes,
or 24 or 25 once that's built out.
Correct. And I'm gonna I don't want to. I was going to put 2021 to present, but I don't want to commingle the ACS data with this data. But I do want to see what that number is,
I'd be
because I'm
curious.
interested to see, and I'll have that. I think I'll have a better grasp of that by the time this comes out for the city council to look at in a few months.
Actually showing vacancy of what again?
This is these are housing units, the vacancy rate for housing in the city. So of the roughly 2,567 homes in the city, 310 of them were vacant as of the 2020 census.
So 12%.
And that's 12%, that's right. And that's pretty close to, what appears to be pretty close to the historical average for the city of TR, right around 10 to 15%. Okay, so this is the number. This is what I wanted to get as close to new as I could, because using the 2020 census numbers is going to be way out of date for median single-family home values. And as you're well aware, Ms. Maxwell, this is obviously the numbers of over the last few years have sort of blown everything else out of the water. So if you'll notice, and to get the most up-to-date numbers, I couldn't get TR specific numbers. I could only get the Greenville, Anderson, Malden Metro, of which we're a part of. So the metro area number, the median average, or the median number for single-family home values is 322,000 in this area, which is up from 240,000 just 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, within the 2-year period. So that's a huge jump in 2 years. I anticipate it's not going to rise much more, just based upon some of the things we're seeing.
It's in the 350s.
That's probably right. Yeah, the median, so yes, it has gone up since even the 2022 numbers, but I think we're probably at a peak or near a peak. I don't anticipate it rising much more than where it's
Lower,
at
it's
currently.
about 2%.
Okay, okay, well, it's interesting. So you'll notice, though, across all these, and I tried to find some, I think these are all the state of South Carolina metros that the Association of Realtors had information on, and they also had the Asheville metro. I wanted to put that in there as well. And you can see that there's a similar jump from pretty much far and wide. I would imagine that most of the metros in the Sun Belt are going to look somewhat similar to the way we're looking moving forward. I know basically everywhere in South Carolina's single-family home values are much higher and getting higher every year. But I do think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think we're at or near a peak when it comes to the median home values. If it rises, it won't be. Yeah, the rate of growth is slowing. Yeah. And it's still growing. Yes. Okay, so this is what I had mentioned earlier. So I don't know if y'all can see that. It may not be 100% clear, but and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit just to show y'all. So these are the developments that have been approved. These are residential developments that have been approved since that 2018 comprehensive plan was adopted. So now they are all in various stages, various statuses at this point. Some of them have been built, some have not. Like as you can see, Trailview Townhomes up on Main Street has been built. Hawkins Park out on Hawkins is just finished up and has just been built. Magnolia Cottage Phase 1, which is the little guy down here on Hemlock, that has been built, and then Pinestone Apartments have been built. Everything else is in various stages of either grading or permitting or building right now. So the total approved rooftops is 869 since that 2018. So if you extrapolate out some of that data, if you have 7,700 people now, 869 people coming, it's a little bit different because this is developments as of 2018, and the census data is as of 2020. So you have to massage the data a little bit, but I've run some calculations, and it puts us at about 8,500 based on the number of rooftops that have been built, and it's not 100% accurate, and I don't want that to get out as being the number that we think it is. That's just kind of the numbers I've been playing around with. That's why I stress that we use the census figures, because that's the hard and fast data that we have. Everything else is just sort of a guess or an educated guess. But at least I wanted to get this in front of you all just to show you, just to give you just a visual idea of where these developments are located citywide. As you can see, they're spread out all around the city. It's not really concentrated in one area, one portion of the city. But I thought this would be an interesting map to show you all, just to give you an idea of where some of the new developments are. And we're gonna continue to update this as, if and when new developments do come in. This is just something I wanted to get in front of you guys today to give you an idea. And I also have on there that we've had 19 single-family units demoed since 2018. So that'll ultimately play a part in any guesstimates of what we have for our population and our growth. So we do demo houses as well, so you got to take that into account. And then there's birth rates and death rates you also have to take into account. So there's a lot of different things that would help reduce the E number, reduce the potential error when you're looking to extrapolate out population data. But I just wanted, I think it's interesting to get that in front of y'all, just to give you an idea spatially of where all these things are located. And all this will be available on the website, or it's currently available on our website as well. So, and I'd be happy to send this out to anybody as far as information is concerned as well. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there were recommendations that were given as part of the 2018 plan. So every comprehensive plan that's written in the state is essentially, it does three things. It provides a snapshot of current conditions. So the 2018 plan provided us a snapshot of conditions in 2018. It looks at goals for the city over the next 10 years, what goals they want to achieve, and then it provides recommendations on how to get to achieve those goals. So within the housing chapter, within each chapter except for population, there were recommendations that were made in that 2018 plan. So that left column, as you can see, are all our 2018 recommendations for the housing chapter. And then I mentioned the goals and the challenges. That's that middle column. And then on the right column is the progress that has been made to this point for each of those recommendations. So I'm just going to go through them one by one just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So the first one is ensure new housing construction includes adequate infrastructure was a recommendation. The progress report in 2023 is that it's in progress, and really it's never, a lot of these things are never going to be complete because they're not actual. There's no way to verify that, hey, this is actually complete. Most of these are ongoing things. But we've made progress towards ensuring that new housing construction includes adequate infrastructure by adopting new subdivision and infrastructure standards in 2019 into the zoning ordinance. So all new development since that point in 2019 has to follow much more stringent infrastructure requirements and subdivision requirements and development requirements as part of their approvals. And you see a lot of those in your seats up on the Planning Commission when they come through for subdivision or for zoning amendments. The second one is amend land development regulations to encourage perimeter buffers and preservation of tree canopy where possible. This is a big one. This is the tree canopy preservation has been addressed through our tree protection standards, which is a subsection of 619. That was just approved in March of 2022. That gives the city much greater authority over the tree cover and on properties and the developers' requirements if they're going to be cutting those trees down. So a lot of good things have come from that so far, and we anticipate a lot of good things moving forward. The new trees that were planted out by the playground, the new playground, those were paid for by this new tree protection requirement. So a lot of good things come from that. The third one, encourage the development of neighborhood associations in the city's subdivisions to proactively address neighborhood issues and concerns. This one is in progress, and this one is definitely ongoing. The city does our best to work with existing HOAs wherever they're applicable to help address any issues or concerns that are not addressed via ordinance or city regulations. So HOAs handle a lot of the issues that come up that are civil matters, and the city does their best to be able to help with those concerns or questions, but those are typically civil matters, so we try to stay out of that as much as we can, but we do try to offer our support where we can.
So do you talk with the developers at that point because they are the ones that establish?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
HOAs?
Yes, ma'am. We work with the developers on the front end to make sure that the HOAs are written in a fair and in a good way. I would say most of the issues that we deal with are older neighborhoods that don't have fully established HOAs, that don't have those rules clearly defined. So we work with the developers on the front end to make sure the new ones are defined correctly. Next is conduct a housing study in order to identify present and future needs of a variety of housing choices and to identify ideal locations for various housing types. So we've been working since before I got here. I picked up the ball and have run with it a little bit. We're working with some outside organizations to define missing middle housing. I don't know if you all remember, if whoever was on the Planning Commission at the time, the Opticos presentation. So we're still working with them and some other organizations to try to help us more clearly define what missing middle housing is and how to get our arms wrapped around it. So that's something that's continuously happening in the city. The next one is further city and community involvement with Habitat for Humanity and other affordable housing partners. That, again, is in progress. The city is a partner with the Greenville County Redevelopment Authority. They are the authority that distributes the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funding for city projects. So we work with them to help identify properties that would be eligible for the CDBG funding. And then we hand off the ball to them and let them handle it from there. But we do work with them on the front end on a lot of these projects. So that is a continuous program. Encourage alternative housing types such as tiny homes and pocket neighborhoods to allow denser and more affordable single-family residential housing types. As I mentioned, that falls under that missing middle housing guide. We are working some of that missing middle housing, and you know, as you all remember, missing middle could be anything between the single-family, detached, and apartments. There's that whole swath of different ideas that are the quote-unquote missing middle. That would include pocket neighborhoods, you know, the potential for tiny homes. That would include some more ideas like quadplexes or triplexes in areas that aren't currently zoned for them. So the idea being we would work to.
Can I ask a question real
Yes,
quick?
sure.
I mean, once again, do you ever approach a developer that comes into town and say, look, we were looking at this particular tract, and do y'all ever or present to them, say, you know, we would love for you to look at the possibility of doing a pocket neighborhood or any of these type things that we looked at in the past in missing middle, or is that something y'all can
Yes.
approach them with?
Absolutely. We've approached developers. We've had developers approach us, and we've guided them towards that type of approach. So yeah, that's a continuous conversation that we
I know it's not
definitely
you know,
encourage.
it's not with their ethos, but at the same time.
Right. So that's been our biggest challenge to this point is for, you know, the economics work for single family detached and they work for apartments, but they haven't seen how it works yet for the other stuff. So we're trying to guide them that way with the understanding that this could work, and that's been the biggest conversation point to this point that I've seen.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely have those conversations quite frequently.
Aside from any tax incentives to them, countywide, statewide, we offer them tax incentives also.
We could. The biggest incentive I think we'd be able to offer is increased density where it's appropriate. So we wouldn't want to put 20 units per acre in an area that isn't supportive of that. But in areas where you could put a triplex or a quadplex that are maybe single family zoned that are on Main Street, something like that, could possibly work. So yeah, that would probably be our best bet at incentives, and maybe we could work with them on the permitting side as well to try to fast track those permits as best we can. There's different things we can do on the city side to encourage that type of development.
Pine is not any portion of it considered.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Pine is not considered within that category.
They do have they have one quadplex. So, and then they have some townhouse, which according to some is not, and according to some is. I'm of the belief that anything that's not single family or apartments is middle. It's by definition sort of in the middle. It's a pretty broad swath.
Especially in density.
Yeah, so that's the main idea. It's not necessarily what we call it, but it's how does it function?
How many people you get on a smaller space?
Yeah, exactly. So how does it function within the fabric of the city is what we're more interested in than we are of what we call it. So, okay. The next one was promoting affordable housing for individuals and families under 80% of the mean family income. And again, we work with the Greenville County Redevelopment Authority to help with some of those programs, and that's where CDBG comes in to an extent, and they've got some other programs they work on as well. And then finally, consider revising regulatory framework to allow accessory structures for single-family residential lots. This is the one we've actually completed. We have an accessory dwelling unit standards, which were approved in 2019, which specifically allow for ADUs in the city.
Which
So-
is the big brouhaha they just got through in Greenville.
Correct. They're
I
That's,
didn't-
that's right.
yeah.
And they've, I don't want to paint this with a completely broad brushstroke, but they've sort of rejiggered their entire zoning ordinance around a lot of these things. And that was
Yes.
one of their big concerns.
That was the big one, yeah.
Yeah. So that basically, that ends my presentation. I'm happy to answer any additional questions on population and housing. But this is the first of what will be 3 or 4 meetings like this, going over the different elements, the different chapters of the comp plan.
Any questions from the committee?
Just with the affordable housing side, what do some of those projects look like that they might be funding or consider funding?
The the
Yeah,
Greenville
but
County redevelopment?
CDBG?
Yeah, so they're going to be looking for low to moderately low income homeowners that essentially either, they have a few different programs. Some of them would be to build new housing for low income. Some would be to rehab low income housing for where folks already live. So they have a few different buckets of money they can pull from. And they have a countywide bucket that they give a portion to each jurisdiction. I think it's based on population. So we get a certain amount. City of Greenville gets a certain amount, so we all share that bucket, or the different portions of that bucket. But essentially, it can be used for a couple different purposes based on whatever program they want to use it for, utilize it for.
For the renovations that are at Railroad and apartment, the little duplexes back there, was that within that plan?
No, I don't believe CDBG money was used for that. That's all private.
Any more questions? We're going to move on to item 2B. Is that correct? The 5-year comprehensive plan review and survey update.
Yep, so just wanted to let everyone know that the survey is up and running. It's been up for about a week now, and I apologize, I should have had this pulled up already, but if you just go to the City of Travelers Rest website. Go to their website. I believe Beth put it on the front page under the scroll. It should be in here somewhere, and if it's not, maybe it got pushed off, but it's up here every once in a while. But the easiest way to get to it is just to go to the planning department. As soon as it loads. And Beth is good about putting these out on the web, not only the website once every few days, but also on Facebook and on social media. And of course, it's going to take this time to be very slow. Okay. So if you just go down and click that form right here, this is the community survey. So it'll be in a few different places, but it'll take you to this survey. It's about 15 questions. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of the questions were on the 2018 comp plan, so I just wanted to keep those consistent so that way we'd have good data points from two different time periods to be able to bounce off each other. But we recommend, or we ask that everyone that lives in the city please take this survey. It will be open probably until September, or at least until September 1st, I should say. Not probably, but at least until September 1st. So, by all means, tell your friends, fill out the survey.
And I was going to ask you, how does that get out to the city residents?
Yeah, so Beth is real good about that. She puts it out on Facebook. She'll put out reminders on the website, and I think it just kind of timed out on the website. It was up earlier this week.
Right. But unless somebody specifically comes and looks for it, they won't know about it.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do is probably get a permanent link on the front page, at least for the time being, just so it's there. I want it to be a little bit more front and center than it is. And we've gotten 40 responses in the first day or so. It just went up yesterday or the day before.
7,000.
Out of 7,000, yeah. But you figure, adults, that's.
It's not like something we could put on Main Street with a kiosk or something. It'd be, with the information would be, there's, something, because I don't think, you see the number of people that show up here for our
Right.
meetings.
Right.
I think we did talk about that. that's right, putting up a kiosk
Or
a table.
something to,
Or
well,
like
we talked, yeah,
Thousand
but,
Stroll or
but in
whatever
general, as
is
far as this
coming up,
survey is
yeah.
concerned, I don't see how you're gonna get, bodies to it
And as long as they just have to,
with them going to
Confirm that
hunt it,
they're
because they
a
don't know about
resident.
it.
or have a business here.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to be a resident, but yeah, those are questions on the survey, but yeah, you're right.
It is a question, that's right.
Yep.
So is it also on the new app that we have?
Yes, it should be, because that links directly to the planning webpage, so yes, it should be available on our app as well.
And then TR Tribune has started back with, that's a good source, I'm sure a lot of people.
Yes, and he has
Tuesdays
done
and
a great job
Thursdays.
of putting it on the front page. Yep, yes, ma'am.
That was my question. All questions we have on that particular item? Any more that you need to?
No, sir?
All right. Any more business this evening to discuss? Anybody else have any more business to discuss? All right, then, hearing no more discussion, I would like to call for a vote to adjourn this evening. All in favor, please.
So moved.
I think.
Yeah, thank you. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion to adjourn is carried by all votes of